Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Josh and this is my beautiful 79 Corvette. Today I'll have a very special video. I know I haven't been posting in a couple of months.
Or you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine.
But with that being said, I do have very exciting news about the car. I have a couple of things that I want to speak about. I ran into some issues with the car and then it ended up being something very easy to fix. But I wanted to speak to you guys about some of the things to look at when these issues present. The car is up and running again. So why don't we just take it for a ride and talk about some of the things that happened with the car. My wife and I just recently moved into a new house here in the Woodlands, Texas. We're right in between Tomball and the Woodlands. And we moved from Richmond, Texas. For those of you who know how Houston is laid out, Tomball and Richmond, Texas are on the completely opposite sides, which means you have to cross pretty much the whole city in order to get to each end. This in a regular car or in my daily driver takes me about an hour taking the tollways and the freeways. However, this was a Friday afternoon and I was feeling adventurous and I decided to go ahead and take the Corvette out and drive it in mid-heat Houston, Texas in traffic. So it took me about 2.5 hours to make it to my destination. Part of the reason for that is because I don't drive the Corvette on freeways and lesser the tolls or the easy tags. And I don't like taking it through the feeders. I wanted to kind of enjoy the ride and take it through the streets. This proved to be a bit of a mistake simply because it took a lot longer than it should. And the traffic was so bad at certain points that it was mostly just stopping and going and stopping and going. Couldn't imagine if this car was a standard, it would have been a nightmare. So those were some of the things that were happening while I was driving. There was just a lot of traffic, it was very hot. And I don't use the AC, so I was pretty much burning myself. With that being said, I decided to go ahead and take it for the drive. After about an hour of driving, when I was midpoint through Houston, almost downtown area, the car started shaking and it was almost like a rough idle. Nonetheless, I kept driving it. It was extremely hot, so I just simply didn't want to stop and look to whatever the damage was. Very silly of my part to do that. Luckily, this was not a big deal or a big problem. It could have been something worse, but it wasn't. So I drove it, the car gave me the misfires. It started throwing me a very loud pop from the exhaust. So every time I would release the accelerator, it would just pop really loud. And I tried to record it, but obviously that didn't happen. So my sincere apologies for that. But it just kept popping and it just kept making weird noises. And the idling was just very, very rough until the point where the car started losing actual speed. So I would accelerate and the car would just hesitate and not want to go. And that made it a very scary ride. So I started diagnosing what the problem was. And my first thought was, let me check the spark plugs and see if there's anything wrong with them. Then I'll check the wires and see if there's anything wrong with those. And then I'll start diagnosing on the distributor. These three things that I named, they're not the most expensive things to replace. If you replace all three at the same time, it could cost you a pretty penny. But if you replace one and eventually the next one and the next one, then you're not gonna feel the expense. But what I should have done is start by checking the wires. So this is one of the things that I wanted to tell you guys. I started by checking the spark plugs, and what a mistake that was. Not only were the spark plugs completely stuck on the car since I've never changed them since I bought the car, but I also didn't have the correct tool. So I ended up breaking, I think 2 or 3 of the spark plugs that were on. And that's because I have headers, Patriot headers, and it just makes it very difficult for you to insert your tool set to remove the spark plugs. So I had to buy an extension tool to make sure that I was able to get those spark plugs out without breaking further. Unfortunately, I ended up breaking 3. Luckily, the way the spark plugs are positioned, it allows for the porcelain and the debris to fall directly onto the floor. You're not gonna suffer them, going inside the engine or anything, which is something that could happen to cars that have the spark plugs from above, which was really good for us. Replaced the spark plugs, bought some new ones, and ended up not being the spark plugs. The car will still give me a misfire. which means that after buying a brand new set of tools, or a couple of tools here and there, buying a brand new set of spark plugs, taking the time to take off the old ones and replace them with the new ones was not the issue. Next, I decided, let me look at the wires, and here's where I found my issue. These cars come with the wires that cross from one side to the other. Certain wires will cross from one side of the engine to the other side of the engine, and vice versa. What happens then is that a lot of these cars came with heat shields to protect those cables. However, because I added headers and stuff, those heat shields were removed to allow for the headers to fit in correctly. I don't know if this is the case with other Corvette owners, but this was my case. And what happened was that the cables that were under the engine burned. So one of them ended up burning to the point where it like melted crisp and it just completely disintegrated. And so that caused the misfire, which once again silly me for not double checking on this prior to replacing anything else, and went ahead and replaced it. I bought the same exact brand that the car currently has, and I went ahead and replaced it and rerouted, as you can see here, rerouted each cable above the engine. And I've driven the car like that a couple of times already, and so far no smoke, no misfire, no anything. And as I'm trying to show here, there's a lot of different ways that you can do this and diagnose certain things on the car. Now, to be exact, the spark plugs that I'm currently running on are the AC Delco's Rapid Fire, and I am very interested in hearing what you guys think about them in the comments, because I did read a lot about them, and I think they were just the most suggestions that I saw on them. The car was running Axle 576 prior, and those are the ones that I showed earlier on the pictures where I broke them. But I also read that the AC Delco's R45 TS, I believe, are the best ones or the standard ones for this particular year and car model. The only reason why I decided to go for the AC Delco Rapid Fire was because I was highly suggested that I could try them and test out the car to see if maybe the car behaved differently, which it does. One thing that I did notice was that the car has a far better start and faster start than previously. And I also noticed, and I know if this is anything to do with the spark plugs or the wire or what, but that's what I'm experiencing. I am definitely open for a discussion down in the comments, as I am not sure about which way I would maybe go next time I'm replacing the spark plugs and the wires. Going on to my next point was the process, and I'm gonna be as explanatory as I can, but the process is pretty straightforward. I used a 5/8 socket, a short one and a long one, for the reason that I have headers. This might be a situation for you as well. And I also use an extension. I used the regular wrench and the extension because it gave me more leverage to pull a little bit harder and get those spark plugs out. I also used DW40 to loosen off the tight spark plugs. So I didn't put a lot, just a little bit, enough to kind of lubricate that area and be able to remove the spark plugs, which did help. That took me about 20 minutes to remove all of them. Like I said, I ended up breaking 3 of them, so hopefully that's not the case with you. But if you break them, don't be afraid. If the spark plug is still fully tight and jammed pretty much into the engine, there's almost no way for any debris or any porcelain to get inside the engine. It will just drop down on the floor. So don't be afraid of breaking 1 or 2 if it happens. Guys, so the first things that we're gonna do is we're gonna locate our spark plugs. This is a V8, so you have 1 spark plug here, 2, you have another one here, 3, and then you have another one right up at the edge, and that would be your 4th spark plug. And then on the other side, you'll have the same exact way. So right now, what we're going to do is we're gonna go ahead and remove each spark plug and see if there's any damages on any of them. We're gonna do this for both sides, and then we're gonna compare. And what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna start by removing this cable. That way it's out of my way. We're gonna put that aside, somewhere where it doesn't intrude. And we're gonna remove the boost from the spark plug. There's 1. There's 2. There's 3. Last one right over here. All right, guys, and for that last one, I had to sort of stop recording and removing with both hands. That way the boot wouldn't get damaged or anything. But I have 1 spark plug, 2 spark plugs, 3 spark plugs, and then 4 spark plugs exposed. So we're gonna go ahead and remove them, and then we're gonna compare them. Then we're gonna do the same for the other side. I'm a little bit concerned about to remove that one because it's right next to the headers. So I'm gonna have to do it sideways or use a wrench to do it. Now, this might be a little bit easier for those of you guys that have worked in multiple cars, specifically Corvettes and 350 engines and all that stuff. But to me, this was a science that I had no clue about, and that's the wires. I had no clue that the distributor guides the wires into a particular spark plug position, pretty much, in the engine. So I thought you could just put them anywhere. And the first way I found out this was not the case was because each particular wire has a different size, which means that each wire travels a different distance to the engine. That was one. So I had to go ahead and use this graph to make sure that I knew exactly where I was putting the wires. I also went ahead and marked each wire on the distributor, and I marked each part on the engine by number to make sure that I was not forgetful and putting them in the wrong place, which was a really fun task, but it could have been a problem if I didn't know or if I wasn't careful enough. So that's one thing that I wanted to note. Make sure that you use this graph if you're looking at a 79 small block 350. Aside from that, the other thing that I've done to the car is paint the hood strut. It was pretty black and pretty greasy and ugly, and went ahead and cleaned it, sanded, and painted it with Rust-Oleum chrome. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and staying tuned with my videos and my updates. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please comment down below, or if you have any suggestions for any up and coming videos, please do let me know that in the comments. That it helps me a lot and it helps the channel out. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your year. Bye.